So, good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to today, and we will go ahead and get started. So, for today, we're just going to start right in with the meditation. So, I'm inviting you to find a posture where you can sit comfortably for our half hour or so and allow yourself to settle in to your sitting spot, bringing the attention inward. And if you joined early enough that you had a chance to see the chats of people saying hello and greeting each other, maybe just carrying in the sweet feeling that comes from that, and allowing a softening of your being. And perhaps on the next out breath, allowing the body to settle a little bit deeper into itself. Sensing the way the head is connected to the whole spine, and the shoulders and arms are balanced at the top of the torso such that there's a symmetry. Softening down through the torso, heart area, the belly area, all the way down through the legs, the knees, the ankles, the feet. Sensing this body in the posture it's in, this particular human body. The amazing one that has supported you since birth. And then sensing into how the mind is, how the heart is now, bringing some mindful presence to any emotions that are happening, thoughts. Just having a general sense of how the mind is. And then if it's meaningful for you, I invite a brief reflection on refuge. The refuges that we can carry that are more stable, that are deeper than putting refuge in the changeable things of the world. So, the refuge of the Buddha, of awareness, of our ability to awaken, of the human potential for freedom. And the refuge of the Dharma, the teachings of the knowing that there's a spiritual path. It's very fortunate knowledge to have. Or the immediate Dharma, the sense of, I've heard a teacher call it a living wisdom stream that we can tap into, refuge of the Dharma in our lives. And the Sangha, and the fact that we're not alone in doing this. We couldn't be alone. From the group of others that were on the screen, typing into the chat, to the whole sense of everyone else in the world who's interested in a spiritual path, or to the living lineage that then stretches all the way back to the Buddha. We're part of a flow that's connected. And sensing how it is to touch into that or evoke that here at the beginning of our sit. And then just returning attention to the body sitting. The practice of mindfulness is sometimes called 360-degree awareness. That's not necessarily a literal sense, although it can be. It's more that we're allowing ourselves to know all aspects of experience. And so we'll gradually open in this meditation to the different domains of our human experience, beginning with the body. Sensing the body and its in and out breathing as it sits here, relatively still, sitting and breathing. Letting the body sense the body. Letting the body be the body and knowing that as it is. And this body is sensitive all the time. It is sensing experiences that touch it in some way. And it's responsive as a result, and there's a very basic response. Some of the sensory experiences feel what we call pleasant. They're soft, they're agreeable, and there's a kind of a rising up feeling. Ah, and some of the sense experiences are what we call unpleasant. That's just the words, but the experience is that they're hard or um, there's a shrinking away from them in a certain way, and the body says, ah. And many experiences are not so strong in either of those directions, neither pleasant nor unpleasant. It's a somewhat subtle thing to put one's attention on the feeling tone, and yet very powerful. Seeing if you can tune in to that very basic level of the affective tone of experience, letting it shift and change from one to the other. And the simplicity of the feeling tone, just pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, can lead the mind into the full richness of what we call the chitta, the mind, its overall timbre or flavor, the mental world that includes very human qualities like desires, like irritations, worries, thoughts. Also, the beautiful mind states like love, and sometimes the mind is stable and sometimes it's scattered. The whole richness of the psyche, if you will. This too we can be aware of and let express itself as itself, not to become that mindlessly, but to know it as it expresses itself as itself. Feeling the whole landscape of the mind, the heart, the citta. And as we get the feel of the citta in this moment, we may begin to perceive it like an ecosystem. There's a lot going on in the mind and the heart. Things keep coming in, like weather. And yet the ecosystem itself could be balanced, healthy, or it could be unbalanced in some way. And as we allow our attention to refine, we may notice the conditioned components of our ecosystem. As if in a forest, we start seeing, oh, there are trees, there are squirrels, there are mushrooms, there's weather, insects. And so we see the components of our mental ecosystem. Sometimes there are hindrances. like aversion or sleepiness. And sometimes there are beautiful factors, factors of awakening. All of it occurring within the flow of sense experience, of hearing, of touching. All of these interactive pieces that make the ecosystem. Ingredients that make the recipe. Can we sense all those shifting, changing particularities of the moment? This is 360-degree awareness. The great potential of the human mind to know all of this and to rest in it. And this 360-degree awareness is something that can be carried out of meditation into the fullness of our life. Also, it may not have exactly the same focus, exactly the same precision, but the same potential to sense both the particular and the kind of broad landscape can be carried into our conversations, into our family life, into our work life, perhaps with an aim of finding some balance, of grounding in the refuge of the Dharma, the Sangha, the Buddha as we go through our day. What would it be like to carry this sense of knowing from the specifics of how the body feels to the mind, to the situation that we're in, trusting that mindfulness can alert us to what we need to be able to see and to ways that we may bring balance, ease, peace, clarity to ourselves and to others that we're interacting with. All of it made possible by 360-degree, or at least as many degrees as we have available, awareness. What a gift to be present for our life and our interactions. So we've been on quite a journey this week from the deeply unfortunate realms of hell beings and hungry ghosts to the limitations of the animals who are just playing out instincts, and then upward to the heaven or deva realms that are the fruit of good actions and deep meditative states. And when we create good karma, good kama, there are genuine results of that. The mind and the heart can refine into very beautiful states that help not only us, but others. But as we noted yesterday, the mind can get stuck in the God realms. We can forget that even those states are conditioned. And we may lose sight of wisdom, which points out that all mind states are temporary. So there is no final fixed state that we can arrive at. Instead, the freedom or the peace that we're seeking is found in the relationship to the flow of changing conditions that we live in. So today we're going to talk about the last realm that we haven't discussed yet, which is the human realm. The human realm. And we could say that this realm is characterized maybe by desire, by all kinds of desire. So we get born as humans, it's said in the cosmology. We get born as humans because we're interested in the sense world. We like to experience the six senses that we live with. And so we have these desires, and some of them are unhealthy, as we know, and some of them are healthy, wholesome desires that we carry. And human beings spend a lot of time and energy trying to get things set up well. Trying to create a good life. So we try to get good relationships and livelihood and a place to live and food and community and meaningfulness to what we're doing. We spend a lot of time tweaking all of those things. It's kind of our job as human beings to get things set up. And it's not so easy, is it? It's not so easy, actually, to be a human being. It's somewhat hard, but it's not impossibly hard. It's just a bit hard. So, this is not the best realm in terms of comfort, deep happiness, pleasures. It's not the best, but it's not one of the unfortunate realms that are extremely limited in terms of possibilities and in terms of understanding. So, it's quite an interesting realm. Um, Ajahn Sucitto wrote a piece about all the realms, and he said he thought the human realm was probably the most unbelievable, that, that there could be such a wide range. There's a new baby in my family. Some younger family members had a baby just a couple weeks ago, and there's all the usual and appropriate delight and joy and happiness surrounding this new life. But realistically, I'm also aware that it's going to be a mixed bag for this child. There are big challenges in being human. There's guaranteed dukkha in being born into this body. And there's also great potential in a human birth. But will this baby have the conditions to find and tap into that? I hope so. That's my biggest hope for her. So there's a Dharma teaching that's used across the traditions, but I'll read you the version from the Pali Canon about a blind turtle. Maybe I'll just summarize it. So there's a blind turtle that is swimming in the ocean, and it comes up to the surface every 100 years to get air, I guess. And there's a ring floating on the surface of the ocean, just one ring on the whole ocean, just a small size. And the question is, what are the chances that when the turtle comes up every 100 years, it's going to put its neck through that ring on the ocean? And so the Buddha asks the monks this. He says, what do you think, monks? Would that blind turtle coming up to the surface once every 100 years insert its neck into that yolk with a single hole? And the monks say, oh, Venerable Sir, it would be a very rare chance that that turtle would come up and put its neck through the hole in the ring. And the Buddha replies, so too, it is a very rare chance that one obtains the human state. That it's also, he goes on to say, it's very rare that there would be a Buddha in the world and that the Dharma would be available to us. And then turning it into a teaching, the Buddha says, you have attained that human state, monks. And there's a Buddha in the world, and there are teachings alive for us. Therefore, don't waste the opportunity. So, in the same way, in Tibetan Buddhism, the great good fortune of a human birth is one of the four thoughts that turns the mind toward the Dharma, it's said. So it's quite amazing, actually, that we're here with these potentials that we have. Here in the human realm, we have the interesting ability to, in some ways, visit the other realms, or at least get a little taste of them. And that's what we did this week, is to try to evoke some of the mind states and feelings that can be associated with each of these different realms. And we have the great gift of being able to see them as kind of reflections in our own heart, potentials that we do have. So we can learn a lot as humans. We see that there's unwholesome karma and there's wholesome karma, and we're sensitive enough to notice those differences. And also, if we're very sensitive, we can notice that the heart actually prefers the wholesome, if we can open to that possibility. So that gives us the possibility of refining our life. We have some measure of choice in how we navigate this, which is, again, a great gift. The insight teacher, Dana De Palma, speaks of the immensity of the challenge and the immensity of the opportunity that we carry as humans. So, in that sutta about the turtle, when the Buddha says at the end, don't waste this potential, he doesn't literally say that. What he says is, you have obtained that human state. Therefore, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, this is the arising of suffering, this is the cessation of suffering, and this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. So I've named what are traditionally called the Four Noble Truths in our tradition. They could also be called the Four Noble Insights, maybe. So this is the teaching that the Buddha especially taught to human beings. It's the best teaching for us, the Four Noble Truths. So they're not truths like things that we need to believe, but there's something to notice and to practice with. So these truths or insights or things that we have the potential to see are, first of all, that there is dukkha. There is something unsatisfactory in our life that kind of drives us at a very basic level. This is this desire realm that we live in, right? So we want this, we want that, and it's hard to get it all together and keep it that way. Do you feel that in your life? It's hard to get it all together and keep it that way. That's not a mistake, actually, and it's not a personal failing that we find that hard. It's built in to the structure of this way of living. And so the second noble truth is that there is a lawfulness to that. There's a reason for that. When we are craving or clinging or grasping, there's this sense that arises of offness, of unsatisfactoriness, of can't get it all together, or even sometimes that goes all the way to deep suffering. That certainly happens. But dukkha can be a more subtle sense of just, it's hard. And so we experience dukkha when we have this pushing against reality, when we get out of line with how things are, then there's this feeling that we call dukkha. We have to understand what that is and how it comes about. And then the good news in the third noble truth is that it is possible to experience the end of dukkha. It's possible to, in fact, to experience no dukkha. But before that, we experience various cessations of dukkha that, we were grasping, and then we feel the release of that. We feel the letting go or an acceptance or an opening in some way. And there's an easing of that dukkha that we were feeling. And the Buddha says, notice that. Notice that and see how it comes about and what conditions bring about cessation, and enjoy the feeling of it when it does open in us. And then he says that too is lawful. That's the fourth noble truth, is that there's a path by which we can cultivate the way that we can let go of the all tendency to crave and cling. We can change the mind such that it has a chance not to keep doing that. So this is the perfect teaching for us as humans, as those of us in the kind of the desire realm of wanting to figure things out. So the human realm has just the right mix of pleasant and unpleasant, of dukkha and freedom, and we have just enough mental capacity to understand karma well enough. We can't completely understand how it all works, but we can understand it well enough to walk the path in whatever conditions of life we have. So the alternative to cycling endlessly and mindlessly through the realms of existence is to create and walk the path to awakening. That's, the cycle just goes around and around, and the path actually goes somewhere. And so the Buddha taught about how the ethical quality of our actions affects what realm we enter next. That's the teaching on bright and dark karma. And so it's good to move toward the better realms, the human realms and the deva realms. But the path, we then, as we refine and understand, the path is actually something different than that. It's called neither bright nor dark karma, but the comma that leads to the end of comma. So the path is a special kind of action that we take that helps us not to get stuck in this cyclic existence. It helps us to stand free of the conditions that we're living in, whatever they are. So there's a Tibetan teacher once said, samsara is infamous for being without end. And it's it's a play on words. Um, so it's infamous for being without end, for not having an end. It's just a cycle. And it's also infamous for being without end, for becoming without end. The process of becoming this, becoming that, we're a god, we're a human, we're a hungry ghost, is a way that we go into a world that we identify and we become that. And so samsara is the process of not ending our tendency to become. But it is possible to go beyond this identification, which is one of the forms of craving and clinging. We don't escape to somewhere else, some mythical place called Nibbana that we all get to go to, but we hone the mind so that it doesn't enter into fully these different worlds that are possible for humans. So this is our opportunity. Maybe one way we can see that is, in a practical sense, is when we notice a world arising before our eyes. Oh, here's the opportunity that you could get really angry and just jump into this world, or you could, um, get really desirous and fall into the world of just aiming for this one thing. Um, we see those worlds arise before us, and we have a choice. Okay, I see that. But I'm not going to become that. This is kind of the deepest human practice, if you will, is to have that choice and to discover what it means to live right here in this flow of realms, this flow of relationships, our work, our family, and not have that stickiness, not have to enter into worlds that are created by the mind. So the immensity of the challenge and the immensity of the opportunity. That phrase is echoing in me this week. And I invite you to see the fullness of this, the potential of this human birth. Maybe this teachings this week have opened something in some way. So may they be useful. Take what's useful from them. I think it's a fascinating teaching. Thank you for being here this week. It's been really enjoyable. Take care.